Hey, Tony, so happy to have you here with us today. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Joshua. Yeah, I'm a global knowledge manager. I've been in this particular role for about 7 years, and before that, I was in consulting. Started out in operations strategy, focusing on businesses on how to prove their operations, their processes, Lean Six Sigma best practices, and then I worked into this field of knowledge management with getting an education in my grad school for knowledge management. And that's what really shifted me to my focus in my career, moving from external consulting into a global knowledge management role.
And walk us through the journey of how you got your first role in knowledge management. As many people watching this video knows that there's not necessarily a knowledge management degree. You don't go to university and you're like, that's what I want to do. So what was the path that it took to get into this role? Well, your first knowledge management role, and how did it take you here?
Sure. When I was in consulting, we had a robust knowledge management system. Being able to easily find people, we had communities of practice. We had a great search engine. We had databases that were organized really effectively. And, I stepped back and started to notice all these things that were happening in the background on how we got information quickly. And just got curious on that. And that's where I started to reach out to people in the consulting firm to say, tell me more about knowledge management. And we had a practice there that we're going out to clients at the time. And so I stayed close to that. And they recommended a grad program I went to get into knowledge management. And so while I was going there, while I reached back and was able to get onto a project consulting with the company, and that project was like a communities of practice, setting up communities of practice for this company that had an office in every state. And what they noticed is these offices were not talking to each other. And so the project was, let's create these communities of practice so that people are not recreating the wheel of the deliverables and that people know who to contact. And so that was my first KM project that really made a difference for me in my interest in my career change to start diving more into that type of work.
And as you started to dive more into that type of work, what are some of the things that you feel like has enabled you to have longevity there and be successful with the different projects you take on?
I think it's what excites me in life in general is connection. And so being able to connect people that have a need to people that are desiring that type of need, right? Being that networker, that always excited me. Being someone that can connect ideas to innovate, that excites me. And that's truly what you are in a knowledge management role. You're that operator. You're like the old school telephone operator. In essence, you're stepping back, you're connecting people to people and people to resources. And so I felt as technology is changing and innovating, you're able to learn new innovative ways to do that. And so that's what keeps me engaged. And I think it's just a general curiosity of how do you continue to connect people to the right information at the right time.
And when you talk about new technologies and maybe new ways of connecting people, I know there's a lot happening in the technology world today. Where do you see the future of knowledge management going? And I know that's a broad question, but
Yeah.
when you think of the future, what are some of the first things that come to mind?
Well, you have a lot of automation happening, and it's the role of, in essence, a knowledge manager to train that machine, right? It's not taking away roles per se. It's the knowledge manager learning uh, to how to get information to people in a more efficient way. And so, as you learn what a machine does to intake that information to automate items, you take that knowledge and you start to you be the trainer, right? So you become that mediator, like you generally do in a knowledge management role. You're working with the business leader to understand their priorities, and then the abilities and the capabilities of your firm to connect the dots to say, we can do this to help you meet your priorities. We can For example, we can set these databases up. We can make these communities of practice. We can do X, Y, and Z. And it's the same thing as technology evolves. You're able to learn what that is. And then you just take that as an advisor to say, here's the possibilities on how we train the machine to get the results you want, to run more efficient and effectively is really the results there, right? So as technology evolves, the CAM, the role evolves just to learn how to work with that technology.
And when we think of the audience who's watching this video, many of them are technical writers and they're thinking about hopping into CAM and they're like, is this role right for me? And some things that you mentioned is things like working with stakeholders and understanding the resources are already in the company that can support you. And maybe like a few other things that technical writers aren't very used to as they're thinking, hey, I need to work with the SME to output documentation. But now knowledge management is a whole different type of role. And maybe there's a little bit of overlap that intrigues a lot of people coming from a documentation background.
Yeah.
But what are some signs that you would say, hey, knowledge management is right for you, and this is a career path where you can have success in?
Sure. I think as a technical writer, you're focused on that content lifecycle, the supply chain that comes in to say, here's the new content we want to write. Then there's always a reviewer of some sort, 1, 2, 3 people that goes through that process workflow to get that content to the final state. And then there's the KM lens to say, here's how we need to store this content so that users can find it effectively. That aspect right there is a huge thing of what I do all the time. And I call it the content strategist role, is that people will come to me with a piece of content or multiple pieces of content and say, I want to make this available. And my response is, well, what's the user journey of that? How do you want your users to access that? And how do you want it organized? And so that's where I feel technical writers are already thinking about their audience. It's just now a matter of taking a step further to say, well, how does your audience want to access this? How does it need to be organized? And so I think that's what might intrigue a lot of technical writers and how a shift can happen on what they traditionally do already with pulling in from the supply chain of content, who they work with, getting it reviewed, and then, sent out for publishing. It's just, you'll be more part of the full life cycle to say, well, here's how you want to store it. Here's how you continue to work with your stakeholders to refresh it. And you start the life cycle back over. So hopefully that helps paint a picture.
And when we look at that life cycle and many of the other roles and responsibilities are involved in the knowledge management position that they're looking to assume or looking to jump into, what are some of the challenges that they should expect to come across and maybe some ways to alleviate those challenges, whether that's dealing with stakeholders or anything else?
As you move into the KM role, and you begin to prove yourself or you begin to work on projects, you open the doors for many stakeholders of what KM is capable of doing, and they really like it, right? It's like, wow, if I can get more of this to be able to get the right information faster, I can make better decisions faster. And so what happens then is you begin to get a lot of requests and your scope begins to get, bigger and bigger and bigger. And so when you ask what the biggest hurdle is, it's also having the project manager hat on and prioritizing what's important as you work with stakeholders. I think that's the biggest thing I train managers on, is that ability to prioritize your work and what's important for the stakeholders, to be able to revisit that and really have good relationships with those stakeholders, to set priorities and expectations on when these projects all come together and being able to deliver those in an effective way.
And when we look at being able to prioritize and communicate, I'm sure there's a lot of tools that go into that. And often organizations have a lot of tools for communication. Do you find like any tools more beneficial or less for what you've seen to help implement a solid knowledge management system within a company?
There's a lot of tools that I've been part of with different companies, and it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about process, right? I think that's the focus of this role of KM is focusing on process and how to take it from end to end in the most efficient manner. And when you look at that, you begin to look at, all right, I'm going to need these roles and these types of approval workflows, for example. And it doesn't really, a lot of times doesn't matter what the tool is. It's a matter of focusing on that process and ensuring there's an efficient flow from end to end in that process. So, I can't promote any great tool to say this is the one you should focus on. I think Microsoft SharePoint's probably one of the more popular ones. If people are wondering which one I should go learn, I think a lot of companies do use Microsoft SharePoint and Teams together. So if people are wondering about that, I would say that's probably one of the more popular ones.
Yeah, I think so many organizations are using Microsoft today, and I think a lot more are adopting Microsoft products too. Which sort of brings me to this next question, which is, what do you think about AI and all the buzz around that and how that's going to affect knowledge management? Because I know that's being talked a lot around documentation circles, and people are really curious.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was mentioning slightly earlier today. You're the assistant. You're the one that's going to be training that tool in essence.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what the important thing is to understand, is that to be able to understand the capabilities of what the machine needs, right? This machine needs these certain rules, it needs certain criteria, it needs to know where to go, where to look, where to grab, some certain tags, taxonomy. It needs all these things that the KM generally, if I'm an engineer working on that machine learning, they're generally reaching out to the KM to figure out, okay, I need this taxonomy to be able to make this run effectively or to point to the right repositories. So in essence, I really see the KM as the one assisting the machine learning, and a very important role as AI evolves, is because the background of a KM is that, how do you store content, learning taxonomy, being able to, what I talked about, process, very important, right? Machine learning is going to leverage those processes in some essence. And so that's where I think as AI evolves, the KM role is in a perfect position to be such a great assistance to that.
Yeah, I would imagine that people are going to find the CAM role maybe even more valuable as they realize that, like, hey, we need to better store our content and documentation, all those things to train this AI that's now part of our company.
That's right.
And how do we do that? And who's going to lead that? Okay, well, that's
Yep,
going to be you, the knowledge manager, right?
that's
Uh,
it.
yeah, and I think we're maybe not quite there in people's conclusions yet because they're still like, oh, wow, this is happening right now. But I think maybe in a few months or a year, like more energy is going to be pushed in that direction for
That's
sure.
right.
Yeah, I think information architecture and knowledge management was a scary subject for a lot of companies. And now they're seeing like, oh, wow, this is a thing that we can maybe do effectively now. And it's not as scary. Um,
Right. Yep,
yeah.
exactly.
And for, a lot of the people watching, they're interested in getting their first role in knowledge management. Is there any advice that you'd have for them to land their first role in a knowledge management position?
There's on LinkedIn, there's KM communities. There are two major organizations called KM World and APQC. They hold conferences every year. KMI, believes that's the certification program. It's being connected to those three plus LinkedIn groups is where you can sometimes find those announcements on jobs. So I would recommend being connected towards those, subscribing to any type of newsletters or popular groups that are within those.
And just one more question, which is, let's say you're looking to add somebody to your team. What type of person would you be looking to add to your team? What qualities would stand out to you?
Yeah, I think when I go back to project management, that's a big one. It's being able to have experience working with stakeholders and understanding those, being able to work with them, understand the requirements, and being a solution strategist to say, I understand where you're going, and here's our capabilities, and here's how KM's going to assist you to get to your goal. So having that type of mindset and experience is very helpful, is what I say.
And Tony, I know we talked a lot about knowledge management here today, as well as how to land a role in knowledge management and succeed on the job. Is there any other advice you'd like to give to the people watching on how to do just that?
On advice on landing KM jobs?
And is succeeding in the role?
Yeah, succeeding in the role. I think it really is getting more involved in KM conversations. And what I mean by that, there's a lot of KM groups in LinkedIn and other areas that, putting your questions out for others, so you're able to progress your learning in these topics. And, as you may have questions on, oh, how do I put together a KM strategy? Or, at a very simple level, it could be, how do I become a great KM admin in an organization, right? Those types of curiosities, to be able to get involved in communities, because in essence, that's what we promote too as knowledge managers, is communities. And I think that's such a good learning experience that I remember where early on is how I learned quickly, was getting my questions out to different communities, and learning from those that have already done this and gone down that road.
Yeah, it makes things a lot easier. And I just want to thank you so much for spending the time with us here today to walk us through your journey of how you jumped into KM and also some of the best practices to succeed on the job. And I want to thank everybody for watching this video. And if you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the comment section below, and we'll be sure to answer them. And we'll go ahead and rock and roll from here.
Cool. Thanks, Joshua.